Welcome to today's meeting of Somerset Council's Human Resources Committee. We're meeting today at County Hall in Taunton, and my name is Councillor Theo Buck-Philip. I'm the Executive Lead Member for Transformation, Human Resources and Localities, and it is in that capacity that I am Chair of the committee. Today's meeting will be run using a webcasting system via Microsoft Teams. Committee members and key officers are physically present in the Luttrell Room here in County Hall. Other elected members, members of the public and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or observe. The agenda pack is available via mod.gov or directly from the Council's website from the link which has been sent out to members. Please remember to turn off microphones and cameras when not speaking. As the agendas are now viewed predominantly electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. Finally, there are no planned fire drills today, and in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. Anyone needs assistance in that, please indicate to a member of Democratic Services at the time. Okay, so item 1 is apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from Graham Oakes and Tony Robbins. Do we have any other apologies? And Mark Healy, thank you very much. Okay, I think that covers everyone. I think everyone else is here. So item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting held on the 9th of July 2025. The 9th of September, also 2025. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? No? In which case, can I have a proposer for those minutes? Proposed by Councillor Andy Kendall, seconded by Councillor Lee Redmond. All those in favour? Any against? No, that's passed unanimously. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Stanton.
Not a pecuniary interest, but I ought to mention that I'm a former director of Hay Group, which was taken over by Terry, which and I want to disappoint valuation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stanton. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, so that brings us on to item 4, which is public question time. We have no submitted public questions, and there are no members of public present. See, there's one online, but no one has indicated that they wish to ask a question, so that covers that. Item 5, therefore, is the planning, recruitment and retention update. This is an item which members of the members of the HR committee and indeed members across the council are, understandably very interested in. Unfortunately, no one from the planning service has been able to attend today, and we will look for a future date when that is possible. However, Susie Ray, who is one of our HR business partners who deals with planning, is present, and she is going to give an update from the HR perspective. As I say, we will look for a future date to get someone from the planning service to us as well. But over to Susie.
Hello, good morning everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm recovering from COVID, so I thought it would not be appropriate to come and join you in person.
Thank you very much for not being in person, Susie.
Thank you. Yeah, so just to brief those of you who aren't aware, the planning service is in a crisis at the moment where there's a huge difficulty in attracting and retaining staff, and we had quite a distinct turnover of staff after vesting day, which left a large number of vacancies in the department. Of particular concern is the development management area, which currently is carrying 22 vacancies in key areas such as principal and senior planners. So earlier on this year, a couple of months ago, we took a recruitment and retention allowance business case forward, which was approved. So we were able to apply recruitment allowances to those key posts, and we have just gone out to recruit for all of those 22 vacancies in the development management area. The closing date was this week, so we have got the applications back in. I can't give you any details as to suitability because we're still at the shortlisting phase. So that particular recruitment exercise is still underway, and running alongside that, we've got 2 other bodies that are involved in the recruitment, which is a talent seeker who is a specialist in planning roles. So she is concentrating solely on finding people to fill those roles. And we're also using a not-for-profit company called Public Practice, who also specialise in filling roles in the planning service, with some funding that helps support and develop people within those roles. So that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you very much, Susie. Do we know when we'll be at the end of this current round of recruitment process?
Yes.
The deadline for applications was this week.
Yes.
So when are we likely to know what the final outcome is?
So we've got next week blocked out for interviewing. So we're hoping within the next 2 weeks we can have a decision. The response wasn't as good as we'd hoped, but I think that's more around the fact that there just aren't enough planners in the country for those specific roles. So we've had 26 responses across all of those posts. So there was a big response in the enforcement area, which is a key area, which is good news. We have 5 for principal planners and only 1 for senior planner role. So it's not a fantastic response rate. We continue to work with our recruitment team, with our talent spotter, and she is still taking a really proactive approach, using every means at her disposal to try to find people to fill those roles. So we're working on it constantly, but it will be a couple of weeks before we find out what the outcome is for those roles.
Thank you very much, Susie. That's really very helpful. Can you remind me, I'm sure we have seen this in the past, what the breakdown of roles is? Because you've just given some numbers which are very helpful, but
yes, yeah. So we've got,
without having
yeah,
the number of vacancies in those posts, it doesn't tell you that much.
Yes, no, absolutely. So we have got in the area there's 2 area managers in the planning service. They're both vacant. They're both manned by agency staff. Yeah. Out of 10 principal planners, we are carrying 4 vacancies, all filled currently by agency. Out of the senior planner roles, we have got 18 senior planners, and there are 7 vacancies. And then in the enforcement team, we've got 3 vacancies at enforcement level, 2 vacancies at principal officer level, and 1 at team leader level.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes, Councillor Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one, just to confirm something. You said you're shortlisting. Do you have enough applicants for the respective roles, or would there still be vacancies after this?
There will still be vacancies after this.
Well,
I'm sorry,
Councillor
I lost.
Wakefield. No, that's fine. Thank you. I think that answered the question. Councillor Wakefield.
Yes, so it's good to hear that there is certainly some applications. If they don't recruit everybody they need this time, presumably they'll do another exercise, I don't know, in a few months' time or whenever it's appropriate to do it. I had heard that we've been losing staff to other authorities nearby. I don't know whether that's right or not, because basically our salaries are not comparable. I mean, is this because of the exercise that's been done on the salaries? Does that mean that we're in a better position now? I just wanted to know, really.
Yeah, we did. We initially lost a number of staff. The retention rate has been a lot higher in this financial year because, quite frankly, we've already lost a number of key posts. So the retention rate is lower, and we've got a lot of agency staff. But we did extensive benchmarking right across the country to find out exactly what the problem is, what people are being paid. So we've got literally hundreds of roles every week. We review those roles and what they're paying and what the salaries are, and we keep records of those, and we use that benchmarking to feed into that business case. So if we're not successful on this occasion, we would hope that that is now, we can no longer say it's down to the fact that we don't pay enough, because our salaries now look reasonably strong in comparison with those nationally.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you very much. Good that we've had some applicants. Shame we've not had more, and I guess part of the problem is lots of reasons for it, as Dennis Gold mentioned. My concern is the planning services now impacting local parish councils. You know, I've been to 4 parish councils this week. It is one of the major topics. Clearly, this is not going to get resolved in the near future. Can we just make sure that we start putting some more communications out to the communities and the parishes to let them know what the next step is, because they think we're on a 12-week programme of emergency relating to planning services. So we do need to, because that's what the message we put out originally. So, you know, given this information, I do think we need to start now giving more of a picture to our parishes and our communities as well. And that's not meant, it's just purely because we need to be transparent on it.
Of course, of course.
And yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Fothergill. We'll make sure that's fed back to the planning service, who obviously be responsible for the comms on that. Absolutely. Councillor Purbrick.
Thank you, and thanks for that. I think one of my questions would be around our benchmarking. If we're benchmarking for salaries and presumably the other parts of the package, are we benchmarking against workloads and caseloads? Because that's always been something that has come up as a reason for people leaving, because the caseloads are too high. So are we benchmarking that, and are we confident that the job descriptions and the workload of the people we're looking to recruit is within the market refines? Because otherwise people won't want to come here unless we're paying considerably more than others, and I appreciate why we wouldn't do that, but I think we do need to make sure that the jobs are comparable as well as the salary.
Agreed.
Susie,
And yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, that would be something probably best responded to by Alison, but certainly I know that we really did make it clear within the business case that we are the second largest planning authority in the UK, and therefore the caseloads are significantly higher. And we have tried to look, I know Alison does take that in mind, Alison Blom-Cooper, the head of planning, when she was doing the benchmarking. It is really difficult, given the size of the authority, to have an accurate view of what that would look like, given that we're where we are in terms of sizing. But yeah, that's definitely a consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very quick point, really. Looking a bit more broader, attracting people to come, letting people know that Somerset's a wonderful place to be and to work and to live. There have been, I think, in our children's services, the recruitment programme that was run for them, for our social workers. One of the things that we were promoting was actually that Bridgewater, good try, Lee. That Somerset, it was a wonderful place to come and live and work. And so, are we running a consecutive stream in relation to that, so that we can try and add to the package that we're offering?
Well, just to be very clear, Bridgewater is a wonderful place to come and live and work. The whole of Somerset is. But over to Susie.
Yes, we do. We have a big sort of recruitment piece on Somerset as a place to live and work, and also we do use the fact that we've got some nationally significant infrastructure projects happening at the moment, which is attractive to planners, with the Gravity project, Hinkley Point, and all of the things that are going on there. So we use that coupled with the geographical area and the standard of living to promote that. So yes, we absolutely do use those factors.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the issue that we've got in trying to recruit. I know it's really difficult, but what is also concerning me is the backlog that we've got. And we seem to be cancelling meetings quite regularly in different parts of the county now. So that does actually concern me quite a deal, really. Thank you.
I'm not going to ask for an answer from Susie on that. That's a matter for the planning service. It's not really a matter within our remit as a committee, but it's a fair point to raise. So thank you for that. Okay, do we have any other questions on this? Yes, sorry, that's everyone in the room. Absolutely, I had jotted down. I've got to go to the web to those online. So, Councillor Kay, welcome.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm just joined for this section actually because I'm quite concerned about planning like everybody else. I understand that you've done this extensive benchmarking and everyone's been working very hard to try and deal with this. I understand there's a national shortage. We've also had a rumour, and we've been discussing it within our Green team, that there's going to be even more consultants coming in. I don't know if that's something that, to try and sort this out, I don't know if that's something that this committee will discuss, or if that needs to go to a different scrutiny committee. But is that something that is going to be discussed, and at some point with this committee or another one? Because the consultants we could be paying them up to £1,000 a day or something. It has a financial implication, and I'd rather see that money going to retain the planners that we've already got, if that is something that really is on the cards. It's a rumour at the moment.
Yeah, so we're not a scrutiny committee. I think scrutinising that would, something that would come out of what the budget of either the planning service or possibly a wider corporate budget if appropriate, and maybe something for one of the scrutiny committees to look at. But certainly it's not something that we've got on our forward plan specifically around planning at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to work out which scrutiny committee it's going to go to. All right, thanks a lot.
Well, it would be a matter for either the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee or the Corporate and Resources Scrutiny Committee if they wish to look at that.
Okay, thanks very much. And good luck.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions for Susie on this? If not, thank you very much. Can I just be clear, Susie? We've got vacancies in the team, but those are predominantly filled. Where there are vacancies, they are predominantly filled, but with locums or agency.
That's
staff.
correct.
So,
yeah.
so the team itself does not have huge amounts of capacity gaps as a result of the structure not being filled.
That's
what we're
correct.
looking to do is fill them with permanent members of staff.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Unless we have any other questions, thank you very much for coming and answering our questions today, Susie.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us on to item. We are asked to consider and note the update. We have considered it. I think we've noted it. Good. That brings us on to item 6, which is the people strategy. And I'm going to hand over to Dawn Betteridge, our Service Director for Human Resources and Organisational Development, to introduce this paper.
Good morning, councillors, and thank you, Chair. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our new people strategy to you all this morning. I think it's been a long time coming, and it's very much needed across the organisation. I think that previous conversation about some of the issues we just have in one of the many teams across the council just shows us the importance of the focus that we need to have on developing our workforce. So within your pack of information, there is a covering report, and there are 3 appendices, which I hope that you've had an opportunity to have a read. We've tried to make it as easy a read as possible and bring to life our challenges for the next 3 to 4 years and how we intend to approach them as an organisation. So what you have is a copy of our full people strategy for 2025 to 28. We've also created a plan on a page, which if you wanted just to go straight to that, that gives you literally on one side of A4, the absolute key points that we're trying to put across. And this is designed as well to support managers in having conversations with their staff around why we have a people strategy, because the word itself as a strategy might not make everybody hugely excited to want to grab it. And what we don't want is this just to be another document that sits on the shelf and gets dusty over the next few years. It's a live document. It will be kept up to date as we go forward. We've also put into the document how we're going to measure success and what success will look like. And those KPIs will form part of our forward corporate reporting for Somerset Council as well. So I wasn't intending to go through the whole strategy. There are 3 pillars in there that you will see that we've really focused on, and we've taken on board a huge amount of feedback from across the organisation. The strategy has been developed with the team of service directors across the council. So I've worked with my peers and my colleagues, also with trade unions and our staff groups as well. And we've come up with this through a lot of feedback from our staff and feedback from key stakeholders across the organisation. So the 3 themes are firstly reset and refocus, and that always reminds me of the feedback we had at the corporate peer review not so long ago, where there was a real understanding that we were going to transition from a period of restructuring and that we really had to reset and refocus how we were going to take the organisation forward. And this is all about making sure that we get the basics right, making sure that we're providing the right conditions and the right tools and everything somebody needs to do their job well, and that we understand how we help our staff connect their roles to the vision and goals and aims of the organisation. The second pillar is around attract and retain. So we want to build teams that people want to be part of, so we can retain good people who are really good at their jobs. We want to celebrate individuals' achievements and make sure that contributions are recognised, and really focus on how we make Somerset Council an even better place to work than it is currently. And our third theme is around improve and thrive. And when we talk a lot now about how we need to move into a phase of broader transformation to tackle some of the challenges. And to do that, we need to embrace that future together as one team. So we are going to need to collaborate and find new and innovative ways of doing things so that we can improve and thrive as an organisation. So what we've done in this document is try and bring that to life, give you an idea of the roadmap that we'll be looking at over the next 3 years. And what will happen between now and the end of March is that the strategic HR business partners will be working with directorate leadership teams and services to ensure that there are directorate people plans in place across our 5 main directorates, and that they are tailored very much around what the needs of the business are at that granular level. And in terms of having a golden thread, that will then stream down into business plans and individuals' objectives within our My Conversation appraisal framework and supervision framework. So I think I'm just going to leave it there. I'm really happy to take any questions you might have around the document itself. I wanted to say a thank you to this committee as well for having input into the strategy over the last year. I think we've had a few conversations around how this strategy was developing and what it was looking like. And we had feedback to make sure that we really used plain English, that it wasn't too corporate, that we took that plan on the page and we really kind of used that language to bring the strategy to life. And at the same time, make it a really user-friendly document for our managers to be really clear around what our priorities are for our workforce. So thank you, Chair. I'll pause there.
Thank you very much for that very helpful introduction, Dawn. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Purbrick.
Thank you. My question was really around the KPIs, but firstly, congratulations on getting this done, because I know it will have been a massive task. I think the most important thing of this moving forward is it a living document, and that we are measuring success and making adaptations where that's not happening. I was disappointed to see within the KPIs, there's only one that's actually got a target set, and that's to have 50% of women in leadership roles. Everything else is aimed to maximise, aimed to minimise. I assume when this goes into measurement, there will be some actual figures in there, and seeing as we're a month past this being approved, it would be nice to start to see some of those measurables, because I think as a committee, that's where we can add value in questioning whether we feel it's the right policy approach. I'm also concerned to see that the report wasn't consulted on by the opposition spokesperson or the lead spokesperson for this area until after the executive. So I'm presuming that's an error in the dates within the document, because it says that it wasn't seen by Theo or Sue until after the exec approved it, which I'm sure is totally rubbish. But just for the record, I think we should correct when they did actually see the document. And I think it would have been nice for us to have given some feedback before the executive approved, recognising the fact there's been input over the years. But it seems a bit strange to be coming to a committee a month after the approval. And I think there was an emergency meeting that was snuck in. Perhaps it could have at least given people an opportunity to know. But I think my key ask is, when will we see what the KPIs actually are? And what will be the measurement for amending those? Because I appreciate if we haven't got them in place at the moment, it may be hard to figure out the benchmark, but I think we certainly need to know what we're aiming for. Thanks.
So just a couple of things. I mean, I definitely did see it before it went to executive. So yeah, we need to correct that. But the other point to make is that although this has been endorsed by both the scrutiny committee and the executive, the actual approval is what we will be doing today. So we're the ones who are responsible for approving it. So it's still a draft. It's got the endorsement of those two committees, but we'll be finally signing it off. But Dawn, did you have anything?
Thank you, Chair, for picking up those couple of bits. And yes, we'll absolutely take on board how it looks with the dates that go onto the document. This is a document that has been so socialised across so many different forums that I think that we've had stakeholders sign it off a number of times, and then there have been further changes and further changes and further changes. So I think the dates reflect the most recent sign off, but absolutely take that on board, because I don't want it to feel like we're deliberately excluding our opposition colleagues, because that's not how we like to operate at all. So apologies if that actually is the case. In terms of the KPIs, again, at the time of actually putting this together and getting it through the democratic process, we were still working with the performance team and ELT to confirm what those KPIs are going to look like in detail. That work is completed, and that information will be available to all members each month when we start doing the Q3 corporate performance reports. So my team are now already actively having to work against this. So for the sake of this document, because it's very high level, we've just really indicated the aim is what the KPI type was, and whether we're focusing on percentages or amounts. But I absolutely appreciate you want to see what the actual measures are. Once they're finalised, I'm quite comfortable to update this document with putting that detail in. So we're very transparent about what it is that we are trying to measure. And then the actual data, when it's reported, will be available to all members as well. But we can update this with some more granularity now we've got that information, and I'm quite happy to share with members of this panel what those more detailed KPIs look like. There is a lot here, and I think the last thing I wanted to say is I was really concerned last year when I was looking at our workforce KPIs. There was only 3 or 4 we were really talking about at a senior level with members. And because of the nature of the questions that we received, particularly through HR committee, I wanted to put together a suite of KPIs that were as transparent as possible, but really gave you a flavour of some of the areas that we regularly do talk about, so we can bring that information to you. We can show you the trends on that information, and we have much better quality data on our workforce now than we had last year and the year before.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I thought at one point you said that the targets have been set, and then later on you said that they hadn't, and then I thought you said that they were. Do the figures exist now? Just before I can.
Yes, they do.
I think if we're the approvers of this document, it would have been really good to have had that update. I appreciate this is the document that went through the other processes, but I think if we're sitting here approving and there's something that exists, it would be really good to be able to see it. Because I think with some of these things, it may be that there's a challenge that to deliver our people strategy, we might say it's not ambitious enough or it's totally unrealistic. And you know, if that's the input that we're supposed to be giving, it would be good to have the data. But again, congratulations for getting it to this point.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think that the main thing for me that I'd be asking for from the HR committee today is just looking at the title of the KPIs. I appreciate you'll want to understand the measures and whether or not we are being too ambitious or not ambitious enough. But the ask of the HR committee is, do you think that we are measuring the things that matter? Is this sufficient for what you'd be expecting to see? And are there any measures that you would expect to see from a workforce KPI that maybe we haven't listed here? So that would be particularly useful feedback in terms of, you know, the approval today, and we'll deal with the actual details around the actual stats themselves separately. But hopefully we feel that we're giving you a comprehensive suite of KPIs, and we'll pick up the measures and the detail of what that looks like, and a conversation around whether or not you think the targets are suitable at the relevant fora.
And how will we be able to monitor these KPIs? Will they be coming back to this? Can they come back to this committee on a regular basis? Probably not necessarily every time, but if they come back every, I don't know, 6 months or so, would that be helpful so that we can keep track of it?
Well, the committee meets quarterly, so yes, if you would like an update on a 6 monthly basis, that's absolutely fine. We can bring a summary, but the information will be available through our corporate reporting reports. So all of these I've asked to go into our corporate reporting mechanism versus what we've had in previous years, where I think you've had information on really a small number of factors connected to our workforce, and it's not really been illustrative of the challenges that we have as a new unitary authority.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fothergill.
A useful read as well. Thank you very much. So just a few observations and then a couple of questions if I can. So once again, I'm looking at page 4 of the appendix. I think it's the appendix. Oh, no, it might be the report. It's the one with Somerset population graphs on it. It is interesting, and what I'm seeing from that is what I think we all know, which is the population of 15-24s has gone down 9%, 40-44s have gone down 18%, 45-49 has gone down 12%. The population of 70-74s have gone up 52% in the last 14 years. I think we all knew that. I would be, life does exist beyond 74. I'd like to reassure. I'd like to reassure all my colleagues in the room that. So I would be just really interested to know what that figure is beyond 74, because I think that is the truly frightening figure. It is. That's the bit that we're missing. So that was the first interesting thing. Yeah, and the other one was the people who are economically active is only 59%. That means 41% of the people in the county are economically inactive. Sorry?
So a lot of them retire.
Yeah, that's my point. I'm not making any other point. I'm just saying. But thank you for the commentary. So going on to my specific questions. Number 1 is the roadmap, Annex 1. Year 1, year 2, year 3. Number 1 is that we're already at least halfway through year 1. How achievable is that? Because there's a lot of things that have to be achieved and a lot of things have been delivered. And as the budget for delivering those been ring fenced and approved by the executive is the first question. Year 2 has the budget for the year 2 and the year 3, which falls after the next election, been ring fenced to ensure that we can deliver this, because this is fundamental to the success of the council. So how does that fit into the financial emergency and the money for developing our people, developing our staff, pay grading review, pay grading implementation? Has the money for all that been ring fenced for implementation? And then any more interruptions, I'll go to the equality impact assessment, and looking through that, there are 2 significant equality impact assessments, one on those with disability and one on those with race and ethnicity and English as a second language. What I can't see is any mitigations written into this strategy for those quite vulnerable groups. And I would just wonder what actions are being taken and why that's not included.
Thank you, Councillor. So the quick answer on the budgets, have they been ring fenced for implementation, particularly around the 2 items that are transformation programmes, which is the SAP Success Factors transformation project and the pay and reward project. I can confirm, yes, there is money that has been ring fenced in the MTFP for the implementation of that and for the potential repercussions of that as part of the forward plan with finance, and that's been signed off by the Section 151, has gone through the relevant budget processes. So yes, we believe that anything we've put on here is achievable. It's still ambitious. We are an ambitious council, and we feel like we are still going to have to move at pace to deliver cultural change that is required in Somerset Council over the next 3 years. So yes, we're 6 months in. We were just reviewing that in my senior leadership team. We're reviewing this in its entirety last week and looking at what needs to be still delivered over the next 6 months. In terms of highlight reports, both of those programmes are on track. The SAP Success Factors is rated as amber, but it's tracking green. It is a huge amount of work to do that upgrade of the payroll and recruitment system by April next year, but we've got an excellent team on that and excellent support. So we're on track with that, and that is a very challenging project to do that and BAU. But we have brought in additional resources that were budgeted for in delivering that programme. And in terms of the pay and grading review, we've onboarded our new partner, which is Corn Ferry, into that, and we're now moving forward at pace, which with what will be a 2-year programme of work. And separately, we will clearly be able to bring you updates on where we are with those, with both of those, actually, those programmes. The other items that are on there, they do have budget for. We do have a corporate learning and development budget that has been reduced this year and next year, but it is still sufficient and within the relevant national benchmarking for what we should be spending per head that we can manage corporately. So we do have a budget that will enable us to do management and workforce development across the next 3 years. And again, that is already built into the MTFP. So it is ambitious, but this is what my team are focused on. In addition to obviously running our business as usual focus services. So hopefully that gives you some assurance. In terms of the EIA, it's a little bit confusing on the EIA because the EIA is we did debate about I guess the relevance of sharing it, but we want to be as transparent as possible. The EIA was written on the actual strategy document itself, not as a result of what the projects are within the document. So it's an assessment of how accessible the people strategy actually is, whether or not we'd considered all the protected characteristics within the strategy document. There will be separate EIAs that will be developed for each of these activities of work alongside the relevant business cases and proposals that go forward. So that was really what I was going to say as a point of clarification on the EIA, because if you were looking for how are we actually tackling that within these pieces of work, that wasn't what the EIA was designed to do. I can see I've got my colleagues that probably want to jump in and say that far more articulately than I can. So, Chair, can I, through you, I'll bring in Sari Bryce.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to confirm what Dawn said, but also to add that within the actions, so there are some actions here that are specific to how we will address the issues of accessing this document for those that are neurodiverse, those that for whom English is not their first language. So there are some actions that hopefully support some of the concerns that have been raised.
So can I just confirm that there's an impact assessment for each of the actions under year 1, year 2, and will be for year 2, year 3. So do they already exist for the year 1 actions? Because we're 6 months in and you're already saying we're implementing. So do they already exist?
If we've actually started the work, then yes, they'll exist. If we're about to start the work, then they'll be being worked on currently. But we're absolutely committed to putting EDI at the centre and at the front of everything that we do. We lead on equalities through HR and OD. So we have Michelle and colleagues in the room as well that will be hearing, and it's great to hear your concern around equality impacts across the work that we do, and we will absolutely ensure that they are available for all of those that are classed as projects. That work will be done.
And will they be shared with this committee?
We wouldn't normally share them with the committee, but if there is a request for us to share them, we can probably share that offline, and we're very happy to share that with you.
That'd be helpful, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Redmond and then Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification in relation to KPIs. I'm a big believer in finding a way not to duplicate things if we can. Our annual workforce report that comes out includes a lot of this information that's relevant there. So a couple of questions, and the Chair kindly headed off one of my first ones in when this may come to the committee. So are we making sure that we're not duplicating things? So through the power of BI or whatever it's called these days, the report generation system that comes, but are we going to include in that report an element of these KPIs to report on? The idea being then that we've got one document that could be referenced and cross-referenced, etc. The other bit is relevance to how we're going to learn from these KPIs, in the fact that are we setting a date when we start from, in effect, to put in a line in the sand to go forward on, and at what periods we'll be looking to review. That might help, Chair, when it may want to come to this committee, because obviously I'm assuming that senior leadership team level will be monitoring these on a hourly basis in some situation to make sure that the progress is being made. Are we also comfortable that maybe within this we may have, is there an ability to refine our KPIs when they start presenting to themselves? There may be other bits that are relevant that we can see we may want to change or influence. So is there ability to, is it a live document in effect, or is it in stone?
Thank you, Councillor. Hopefully we're not going to duplicate. Definitely don't want to. I think we've all got plenty of work to be keeping us busy. We would absolutely update you on the annual report from the HR committee. But as I say, if there is a request to bring you something on a 6-monthly basis, we're happy to do that. And we'll make sure that you've got access to the corporate information that comes through. In terms of learning from the KPIs, these KPIs will either be monitored on a monthly or a quarterly basis. That information will go through the same way as we manage all of our KPIs from all our other services. I just think that we're running to catch up a little bit in the workforce space because we haven't had a suite of KPIs that I think we could have that conversation with you. What that will clearly do is that it will show trends, it will show areas of concern, and we'll be able to see whether we've got a grip on some of these issues or not, and where there are sort of red or amber KPIs, we should be having a conversation around what's the rationale for that, what's the root cause of these things, and what we're doing to tackle that to improve our performance. So I felt it was really important that we did build this. And we will absolutely take the learning from them and refine them. I would say at my team level, for my specialist teams, they monitor data on a much more granular level. And what we've tried to do is pull out a suite of KPIs that we think will enable a meaningful conversation for our senior stakeholders and members. But there will be some granularity, I would say, behind these KPIs that we're looking at in a lot of detail, as Susie sort of covered earlier, you know, having that understanding of what it means for a particular service. That data is available. It's just that what we need to do is to look at almost our organisational health of our workforce and look at the overarching trends and see if what we're doing is making a difference. Because if what we're focused on our people strategy is not making a difference on improving these KPIs, then we may be focusing on the wrong things, which we need to stop. And then that's why this needs to be a dynamic strategy. So if we find we need to change our roadmap or change our priorities because we don't know what the future holds, then we can do that. It's an agile enough document that we can change it, and we can change the KPIs if we need to, if we find that they just aren't creating meaningful information for us. But thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Redmond. Thank you very much, Dawn. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. 6 points, the last of which is a question. Firstly, very good work. I'd echo all the comments made already. Worth mentioning that corporate and resources didn't really scrutinise this document because it was embedded in the transformation report, and the committee spent all its time worrying about the appointment of consultants for transformation. So we do need to scrutinise it properly. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The pictures, pictures of happy, smiling people, I don't think improve reports. A question on that: are they actually our people? And the other thing that I've always hated and still do on page 39 and somewhere else is these Sino-Stalinist style emblems, hands pointing in various directions. I think they're just inappropriate. On the KPIs, they look about right. Really good that there are not too many. Really good that the agency spend figures are in there. As you say, trends are the crucial thing, and we look forward to seeing the real numbers. Population statistics, they're rather worrying and very difficult to deal with, especially for Sarah and the whole adult social care team. So we need to keep thinking about that. My question really was prompted by Councillor Fothergill. Is it the case that a councillor who's retired from employment but is receiving an allowance from the council, which is taxed but not called a salary, are they economically active or not?
I'm not sure anyone here has the level of technical knowledge to answer that. Although I would observe that it probably one's age is irrelevant to that particular point. So either you and I, Councillor Stanton, are both economically inactive, or we're both economically active, but I'm not quite sure which.
I think the danger is that we're both politically active, so whether economically can be added to that, I don't know.
So the Stalinist imagery was obviously something we brought in as soon as we took control of the council. But no, that is a reflection of the early stages of the people strategy, behaviour and values. And unless we change that, I think the images are unlikely to change. So
yeah, I did complain about them right at the beginning.
Note your view on that. I think it's a fair point about the smiley happy people. I mean, I like smiley happy people, but I would like them to be smiley happy people who work for Somerset Council. I think we can check that, and I'd quite like us to amend it to some smiley. If we can find some smiley happy people, which I hope can, who work for Somerset Council, it'd be very good if we could replace them with them rather than generic smiley happy people.
But if I may, to be really pedantic and realistic and reflect reality, in the current circumstances, they can't all be happy and smiling.
And thank you for your feedback. I would say we have worked with corporate comms on the design of the strategy, and we did ask for photos of our own workforce. I'll have to take that back to the head of comms in terms of what they're allowing me to use. I think it's always very tricky when you take pictures of the workforce, because we've had a very disruptive last year with a lot of movement in our workforce. A lot of people have left the organisation. So yeah, it can backfire on us sometimes when we use an internal library of pictures. But I agree with you. I'd much prefer it to be really representative and feel really real, rather than from, you know, where we're wearing the lanyards and, you know, we've got pictures of our frontline services and things like that. So I will take that away, because I think that that does add some authenticity to the document when we can relate to the pictures a little bit more. So thank you for that.
If I could come back at a serious point, pictures of our longest serving employees who have stuck it out would be good, and of young people, new people, people serving apprenticeships and so on, and people working in social care and education, which are really the heart of what we do.
Thank you. Good points. We'll feed that back. Councillor Redmond, you wanted to come back in?
It's only a quick point, yeah. I'm just conscious that looking at the recommendations, the HEDRAC committee is recommended to approve the people strategy. All I'd like to do is, if you're willing to, I'm happy to propose that, subject to the comments that we've received today being actioned.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Are you planning to second, Councillor Lace? Do you want to come in? Okay, so we'll hold off on that, because I also have a point to make as well when everyone else is finished. Yes, Councillor Lace.
So I just wanted to work on Annex 2, the KPIs and the quarterly performance reporting. So there are 7 performance indicators in the quarterly reporting. And I thought perhaps one of the most helpful things this committee could do would be to decide whether that should be added to by some more of these KPIs from this document, or whether the 7 is adequate. And then if we were to have reporting back to this committee as well, it does need to tie in with the quarterly reporting. Otherwise it makes no sense. And if we were to approach members, the staff of Somerset Council about using their photographs, could I just add that we need to add in a reassurance about AI use of photographs and exactly what they'll be used for? Because the one thing anybody in the creative industries is worried about at the moment is about how AI uses a voice, a style, an image, and we need to absolutely reassure our staff that we understand that and that we would not ever take advantage of their image.
Thank you, Liz. I'm not sure where we go with the KPIs and the monitoring at this stage. Do you want something? Is it something helpful?
I just wanted to, it is helpful. I just wanted to come back on the photographs. I think you're absolutely right, and equally, I think Councillor Stanton's right as well. And I would prefer not to see pictures of happy, smiley people if they're not ours, and let's just accept that we can't do it. But let's put some hills, some pictures of Glastonbury or whatever. But I just think to use not our people in one of our reports is the wrong thing to do. Equally, if it's difficult, don't let's use our own people. Puts them in a difficult position.
To be clear, it looks like a stock photo. I suppose it's possible that they are our people. We haven't actually checked. We're not. You know.
There's no lanyard show.
There's no lanyards. No. But you're not wearing your lanyard, so maybe they weren't wearing them. Well, maybe they had them in their pockets. Councillor Purbrick.
Just really to come back on the KPIs. If I think that Dawn said that all of the KPIs are going into the corporate reporting system. If all of them are going in, then we should probably be looking to pull reporting here by exception of what comes out of those quarterly ones. If they're all going in the corporate reporting, I think Liz said only 7. So, but I would be very happy if they were all going into the quarterly reports, that we don't bring them to another committee for the sake of bringing them to another committee, but we should be looking to perhaps identify within those quarterly reports things that might be put on the agenda here because there are concerns about the way those KPIs perform. There's certainly no need to do things multiple times.
No, absolutely, that's a fair point. We'll work out how we make sure those are being reported back in the appropriate timescale and form. Okay, so I have one question on the KPIs, So I'm slightly concerned about one of them. I'm sorry I didn't pick this up earlier, which is the penultimate one, which is that one of the KPIs is that we're going to aim to reduce versus last year the number of sexual harassment cases reported. Now, I want to reduce the number of sexual harassment cases, but the best way to reduce the number reported is to stop people reporting them. That doesn't make the situation any better. So is there something we can do around framing that to reflect what we actually want to do, which is to reduce the number of cases of sexual harassment, rather than we want to maximise reporting? Is there something we can do to sort of improve where we are with the wording of that, or how it's measured? I mean, I accept that you can only measure what's reported, but I really am keen that this reflects the fact that we're not going to go around and tell people your KPI is to reduce the number of reports and therefore stop people reporting them. The opposite. What can we do to improve the wording there? Can anyone help me? Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. I'd make a suggestion that we can take that away and reword it, something around encouraging and facilitating people to report around that area, and to increase people's awareness and reporting. There is a separate piece of work that's actually been undertaken at the moment around sexual harassment. So we can take that away and reword, if that's okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Purbury.
I'd nearly raised the same myself, but I think ultimately the goal is to reduce, but we do need to maximise reporting. So perhaps there is an additional KPI that within our annual questions to staff, do they find it, do they understand, do they find it easy, whatever the wording is, to report any issues that there are? And if that figure is going up and the other figure is going down, then we know we are capturing the reports, because I think ultimately the goal is to reduce the happenings. You can't measure that because you can only get them from reporting, but you need people to be able to tell you, I know how to report this and I feel comfortable that I can report this without any kind of comeback on myself. And that is probably an additional KPI if we want to measure that truly.
Yeah. Thank you. Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. That's really helpful. Thank you, Councillor. Just to say that what we are aware of is when we introduce the work that we're doing around facilitating and ensuring people know how to report, and they know what sexual harassment is and what may constitute a sexual harassment, we do anticipate that we may see an initial increase in reporting because of the awareness raising. So I just wanted to mention that because we are likely to see an initial increase potentially in the number of reports, but with a view to long-term reduction. Thank you.
Yeah, but we don't know the number because we don't know the numbers before. Okay, well, that's a very helpful suggestion from Councillor Purbrick, and I think we're going to make that one of the notes to do a little bit of extra work on and see how we can improve that. I have a proposal from, unless anyone else wants to come in on anything, I have a proposal from Councillor Redmond that we approve the report subject to the minor amendments highlighted in the debate. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Stanton. Those in favour? Any again? That's passed unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you to Dawn and the whole team for all the work on the production of this, which I am sure will be a very valuable document and help steer the work of the HROD function over the next 3 years. Thank you very much. Okay, so item 7 is a verbal report on health and safety policies, I think. Daniel? Is there? Yes, no?
Sorry, Chair, I must have missed that one. We haven't got any health and safety policies to bring to the HR committee today, although we're intending on bringing 5 to the January committee meeting. That will be the council's partnerships policy, noise policy, electrical safety policy, managing contractors policy, and finally a policy around employee engagement and committees.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Daniel.
We've sorry, Chair, we have consulted on 3 of those policies with the council's health, safety, wellbeing steering group. That concluded 26th of September, I believe. So that would have been the noise, electrical policy, and managing contractors policy. We're working on the other 2 policies this month, and we're hoping to initiate consultation with the steering group for the beginning of November. If we hit that target, then those policies will come to the January meeting. But the 3 that I mentioned first, they will definitely be coming.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lation.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, in case I'm the only overlap with Audit Committee, that Daniel did a sterling job reporting to the recent Audit Committee on health and safety culture in the council, and it was a comprehensive report that Daniel gave Audit, and Audit members were really interested too. So and we did reference the fact that Daniel reports to HR committee, that there are times in this enormous council when it feels that we're reporting across different committees and not always understanding what is happening in each committee. So I just wanted to commend the work that Daniel did for Audit. Thank you. And just say that I did make sure Audit Committee members understand that the health and safety work does come to HR committee.
Thank you very much. Liz.
Yeah, thank you so much for the feedback. I believe Councillor Wakefield was there as well. Is that at the back? Yeah. Thank you.
No, it was. Thank you very much for all of that work, which is really appreciated, Daniel. Okay, well that covers item 7. In which case, I'm going to give you a 5-minute break because I've been asked to have a break midway through, and we're probably about midway through. What time is it? Anyone got is it 2 minutes past 11? So I'll give you an 8-minute break and come back at 10 minutes past 11. Anyway, welcome back. We are still the HR Committee of Somerset Council. We've just covered, before the break, we covered up to and including item 6. So we now move on to item 7, no, up to including item 7. So we now move on to item 8, which is human resources policies. And I will invite Michelle Anderson, Employee Relations Manager, to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. So we are bringing 3 policies this month to the committee, 2 of which we're asking for endorsement because they're policies that are already in existence and we've reviewed. But we have introduced one. Can you speak a bit closer to the mic? I'm not sure the microphone's really picking. I can hear you, but I don't think it's because of the microphone. So is that better? Yep. Apologies. So we're bringing 3 policies to the committee this month. 2 of which are for endorsement because they are existing policies that we have reviewed and updated. And there is one new policy, which is the social media policy that we're introducing. So if I look at the first policy, which is the alcohol and substance misuse, there are no significant changes that we've made to this policy. What we have, however, done is try to improve the language and to generally make the policy more accessible and readable. We have included the prescription drugs, which wasn't in the former policy. The policy has been consulted with a range of people, but very much including public health. And we have benchmarked policy with Gloucestershire and Wiltshire councils. Are there any questions in relation to this policy or any comments, please?
Councillor Purbrick.
Thank you. Yeah, I've read through this one a number of times and I may just be missing it, but the misuse of prescription drugs, I couldn't find any kind of definition for what that meant. It's very clear within the Act what misuse of illegal substances and would be, but I wonder whether it would be helpful to have some kind of definition on what that means, because there are many ways that I could look at it, which would all be very different, and I won't go into now, but I just think it didn't feel clear enough to me. I read a lot of these policies, so hopefully I would have found it. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's really helpful. Yes, absolutely. Really happy to go away and look at adding some clarity around that definition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Any other comments or questions on this policy? No, in which case we'll move on to the next policy.
Thank you, Chair. So the next policy relates to our induction and probation policy. Again, what we've tried to do with this policy is really improve the accessibility of the policy, make it more easily readable. So we've included, you may have noted, a flowchart for managers to also help them navigate the probation and induction processes. There were no, as I say, no significant changes to this policy. We did add some clarification in explicitly stating that it excludes employees of local authority maintained schools, as they have their own separate HR policies. We have also tried to emphasise throughout the way we've worded the policy to ensure understanding that the induction and probation, the responsibilities lie both with the employer, the line manager, and also the employee. So to add that kind of clarity and further clarity as well around necessary documentation following reviews throughout the process. Again, the policy was consulted and we consulted particularly here with a number of service managers who have used the policy recently, and we benchmarked against Devon County Council and Wiltshire Council, sorry. Were there any questions in relation to this policy, please?
Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much indeed, Michelle. It's a fairly standard policy. I've always been very nervous about probation policies, though, because if I'm a aspiring planning officer thinking about coming to Somerset Council and I'm giving up a 1 month or a 3 month notice and I'm going to be put on a 1 week notice, that is going to be a reason not to apply. So sometimes probation policies can work against recruitment, and I just wonder if we've got any evidence of that. I don't suspect we're going to do anything about this policy, but it does work contrary sometimes to trying to attract people into organisations.
Thank you, Councillor. Those are helpful comments, and certainly something we can look at in the future is gathering some feedback through the recruitment. We can go away and have a think about that, because that's definitely something.
I think even just looking at an advert, if I knew that I was going to go onto a probation where it was a 1 week notice and I was thinking about moving my family and making a commitment to Somerset, and you were saying within the first months we can sack you within a week, I'm not going to go there. So I'm always very nervous about probation periods. I understand we've got to have a policy, but that's my personal nervousness.
So, sorry, just to further add to that, there will be some further changes with the employment bill with day one rights. So again, there will be some reassurances undoubtedly for candidates in that situation, but we will look at that. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Councillor Leishon?
I just wanted to ask, if I may, how that compares with the benchmarking work that you've done with other councils?
Thank you, Councillor. The benchmarking, we found that our policy was far more accessible and readable. Some probation policies appear to be very complex, and I would suggest that our policy is a much more simplified process, very similar in terms of timeframes. there weren't any significant differences at all between just some of the other policies we did look at seemed to be far more complex. So we tried to purposefully not add any more sort of complexity to ours.
So the 1 week notice, would that have been the same in other council policies?
Yes, councillor, that's pretty standardised across other councils.
If I may come back again, does this then, is this clear then how this leads into what we now call my conversation rather than annual review or appraisal? Would, for somebody new to the council, would that be clear? Would that be part of the induction process, the probation process, how they understand? Because when this has worked well in my work experience, it's when you've been able to go right through the probation period exactly as prescribed, and then it leads into those annual, we call them development meetings, if they're called now my conversation. Other people, particularly in the private sector, they call them appraisals. But I just wondered, are we clear enough with new staff how that continues in a supportive way on an annual basis?
Thank you, councillor. Interestingly, one of the conversations we had, particularly with the unions with this and with union feedback, was around the need for employees to really understand what the expectations they should have in terms of those ongoing my conversations and other types of supervision and support that's available. So what we will be doing, separate to this policy, but because of reviewing the policies, we are looking at reviewing what we include in induction, what new starters have, in terms of information, and we'll be running some webinars as well to raise awareness of these policies for both employees and managers. So that's something that we're actually planning now, and this is one of the first policies that we will introduce in that way, which so hopefully that helps.
Chair, I'd just like to say that after the restructure of the last financial year, I'm hopeful now that people will come to this kind of afreshed and actually more willing to engage with it. I know from my own experience, when you're under really heavy financial pressure and pressure to make big changes to how you work, that this work, which is critically important for a good workforce, both for the employer's point of view and the employees. Sometimes this kind of work can slip, and I really hope now that we're past the restructure that we come to this kind of anew. And so I really welcome us having this policy here today.
Thank you. Councillor Fothergill.
Sorry to come back. I just want to stress that I've got no concerns about people that join us and they're going through the right process and finish up in my conversation and all that process. My concern is what messages we're giving to people who decide not to even apply. As we've heard before, it was a bit of an issue. And is this a barrier for that? And I suppose my one question is there a facility to suspend the probation policy for certain key jobs that are critical to recruit to? So that it's not providing a barrier. There's a reason not to apply as opposed to giving people a reason to apply. That's my thrust here. It's not about after they've joined us, which I think works.
Thank you, councillor. It's an interesting point, and it's certainly one for us to go away and think about in those difficult recruitment areas. Thank you. Were there any further questions in relation to this policy, please?
So I've got Lee Redman in. Oh, yeah, I know. Sorry, Councillor Kay. I was going to come to you, but then Councillor Redman has his hand up to tell me that I needed to come to you. So, Councillor Kay.
Sorry, I wasn't sure what was happening there. Thank you. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. I may be going off piste a bit here, but Appendix C is called Induction and Probation Policies. And I'm actually interested in the induction bit of it. And as I say, because this is my first time I've ever been to the Human Resources Committee, and it's very interesting, maybe that you've talked about this many times before, and perhaps you can just sort of signpost me as to where I might be able to find sort of the elements that make up an induction programme for when people join the council. So, for example, what you go through in terms of what everybody goes through in terms of talking about how important it is to be a corporate parent, the protocols about answering emails at certain times, the vision of the council and how we're all working towards this vision. And then some of the data, I presume, that we talked about, we looked at earlier, that's about the populations and how we're aging and some of the characteristics of the population in Somerset. Is there a schedule somewhere that shows what all that induction is? And could I see it? Is it possible to see it?
Dawn?
Thank you for your question. Yes, there absolutely is. I will ask Clive Mallon, who's our head of OD and employee experience, to share with you our induction programme. As a relatively new permanent employee to Somerset Council, I've been experiencing it firsthand. And Clive did an excellent corporate induction online yesterday with over 60 staff that have joined or have tupied into the organisation recently. Over the last couple of months, because sometimes it just depends on people's availability. On your first day, you're given like a digital welcome pack as well, and obviously, you know, your face-to-face induction with your line manager, but there's an awful lot of information provided, and then you can book onto things, and it's very sort of employee-led, really. So once they understand, you know, their hours and what they're doing and where they're working, they can work with their line manager about doing the induction training over their first 6 weeks of employment in work time. It's a really good programme. Clive did a couple of hours online yesterday. It was also on Teams, so people could access it from anywhere. And he covered all of the things you've just mentioned and a huge amount of others as well. And it was actually really interesting. He went into quite a lot of depth around our data and information about Somerset and how the governance works. It was a really comprehensive overview for a new starter. So I'll ask Clive to drop you a line and just let you know what it is that we are covering. We're continually improving the offer to make it accessible and interesting and informative and timely for people that are joining the council. Some people were attending on day 2 of their employment. Some people have been here for 2 or 3 months before they'd attended, but it was very well attended yesterday.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. Thank you, Dawn. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, Councillor Kay, you've given me a really good opportunity to swerve off piste slightly. I think one of the opportunities that new staff have, as well as new councillors have, is access to the Learning Centre. And one of the things that it would be helpful there, I think, to squeeze in here is a reminder that all councillors also have access to the Learning Centre. And one of the things that's relevant in relation to that is the essential training element. Obviously, as different staff join different departments, they will have different elements that add on to that. But there's a basic line of essential training that runs through, which includes safeguarding, etc., and includes the corporate parenting video, which we've recently added. So I would highlight that to both councillors and anyone else interested.
Thank you very much for highlighting that, Councillor Redmond. That's really helpful. Okay, I don't think we have anything else on the alcohol and substance misuse policy or the induction and probation policy, which are the ones which we are just asked to endorse. So that brings us on to the social media policy, which is a new policy which we're being asked to approve. So are you going to take us through this, Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. So the social media policy is the new policy that's been created, and it's to support employees really in knowing how they're expected to use social media, both within the workplace and for personal use more clearly. There are a number of policies that are already in existence, which you would have seen linked into the draft policy. But we felt quite strongly that we needed something centrally in HR, because that's where we believe employees would come if they needed clarity on what they should and shouldn't be doing in terms of social media. So to create this policy, we did quite extensive consultation, actually, both within in-house in terms of with ICT, in understanding to ensure that we weren't duplicating information as well, and we were each linking to each other's policies correctly. We also consulted with information governance and the communications team, who all three of those areas hold their own social media related policies. We consulted within employee relations and the recruitment team in particular, and policy and practice team. We also held some focus groups of employees, and specifically from the neurodiversity and the young people's networks, to show them the policy, to get their feedback, etc. And we did benchmarking, but we particularly turned to ACAS as well for guidance in creating this policy. We benchmarked against Devon County Council. Were there any questions in relation to the policy? Anybody had any comments?
Councillor Fothergill.
Not as such to the policy. I'd just like it clarified within the policy, though, whether this applies to councillors or not, even if they're economically not. And I think that then begs the questions of which policies do apply to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. No, this doesn't apply to specifically to councillors, but I will go away, and I'd like to go away and think about your question and come back and be able to answer it fully, if that's okay, in terms of if any do.
I don't think there's anything in here which we would disagree with, and I think he's absolutely right. But I just think we need to be very clear into governance whether this forms part of expectations of councillors or not, or whether that forms as elsewhere. I just think there's some, we are in a grey area here, as we all know. I think this is an opportunity to give a bit of clarity.
No, you've raised a really important point that, I mean, it's a wider point about all of the policies. Some of them do and some of them don't, and how we know which ones do and which ones don't. Actually, we need to make sure we do some work on being clear about that. Yeah. So I've got Councillor Purbrick next.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking for some clarity around some parts of the policy that seem to be saying opposite things to one another. So data protection policy and data protection law is obviously very clear in terms of how we use people's information, which I'm guessing is where the surveillance element comes from, that on page 73, 2.3, surveillance of service users or colleagues via media is not advised. But then in the second paragraph of that section, it talks about the fact that by using council IT services, that people will be monitored to show compliance. So that would suggest that there is surveillance of social media usage for colleagues, if not service users. So it was kind of a bit of a contradiction there. And also, I don't know what the law is around the surveillance of service users. Presumably our fraud teams will actually look at different things to see if the service users are doing it. So are we tying our hands almost with this policy by saying we can't do something that in practice we are already doing, or are we not doing that and there is no surveillance of service users in a fraud environment? So that surveillance bit to me felt a little bit arguing with itself. And also on the recruitment side, presumably we are using social media and in some cases influencers on social media to be able to promote the idea of working here. If somebody is applying through a social media channel to be assessed for recruitment here, and us to not look at that social media channel to see if they have the skills or the attributes to do that would seem bizarre, because actually that is the shop window for many people in looking at recruitment. So again, just a little bit of a contradiction in terms there. So I wanted to understand, is that to do with the process of our recruitment, where we only look at what is put in front of us and what somebody says on the day, or are we really not going to look at somebody's LinkedIn if they apply through LinkedIn to join us? And then finally, Chair, on the responsibilities when using personal social media and the use of personal social media, it is well known within social media space that people rather than organisations often have more loyal and thorough followings than organisations do. If we have key people within our organisation who are posting for their jobs and able to get better recruitment or to show the kind of culture of our organisation, are they allowed to be doing that stuff on social media on their personal accounts within work time, and where is the kind of clarity for where that sits? So I just think that social media policy is a quagmire wherever you work and however you work, but I think we do need to make sure that there are the caveats in there so that we don't tie ourselves up in knots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The surveillance, yes, RIT and certainly the full team do have the right to carry out surveillance in certain circumstances. And there's a link above to the employee surveillance and monitoring policy that sits within information governance. But certainly would be happy to look at that to see if we can reword it slightly so that it's clearer. That would be fine. Thank you. In terms of recruitment, I think where we were coming from there was if you had an applicant apply online in the usual way, we would like to discourage people from then looking up a candidate on social media, actively seeking to find social media to see and look up, you know, so what they think of that candidate and what's available. If, however, the candidate applied via LinkedIn, it would be perfectly acceptable to look at LinkedIn. They've invited you to do so by applying through that route. In the same way as a candidate may, for example, put their LinkedIn profile or another social media profile maybe on the top of their CV, and we see that as an invitation for you to absolutely to be able to look. But what we want to do is to discourage where a candidate hasn't openly invited you to look at their LinkedIn or their social media profile. We're discouraging that happening. So that was where we were coming from that point. If we need to be clearer, I'm really happy to, like I say, look at the wording again and see if we can be. And then the, forgive me, Councillor, could you remind me of the personal social media question?
Yeah, so it was about employees who might be influencers who are using their personal social media to promote things within the council or whatever else. One, I presume they're allowed to do that during work time, so a caveat within there. And two, potentially, if we have got people who are doing that, you actually need something within here to define how that would work.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to take that away if that's okay and look at that properly. Would that be okay? I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, you want to come back?
So my final question on this was also with some of the links. One of the links goes to the social media policy, which is the communications team policy, which policy is probably a loose word for it. It's a page on how to request official social media, so to speak. But there's a link within that page to an updated, they're calling it, internet and social media policy brackets awaiting update. Is this policy, or are the communications team also working on a separate policy that is in train as well?
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, the communications team have their own policy linked to the work that they do specifically, and I believe that they are updating that now.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Pelston.
Thank you. The first piece of clarification that I'm after is around responsibilities or personal social media use. Yes, it is advisable, obviously, to make sure that anybody who is on social media who doesn't wish to be recognised as being an employee of the council does that as well as they possibly can. Is 3.3 in relation to any discussions to do with Somerset Council, or is it to do with any discussions that any employee may have on their personal social media profiles?
Thank you, councillor. Conduct on personal social media under 3.3 relates to well, it predominantly will relate to in relation to the council. However, if there may be individual circumstances that we would look at where a threatening post, for example, has been made from one employee to another employee, etc., or a service user, that we would need to investigate individually. Apologies, that maybe doesn't clearly answer your question.
It partly clears it up. So basically it is, if it is within their role in some way, shape or form, it has nothing to do with any communications outside in their own personal private life, and they are not known as a Somerset Council employee.
Sorry, if I could just ask for some clarification, councillor. So I think what you're saying is that this is an individual who is not identifiable as an employee of the council, who might post a personal view of something, and whether that would fall within the remit of this policy. Have I got that correct?
Fairly correct, yes.
Fairly correct.
Fairly correct. I mean, obviously, again, there are a considerable amount of blurred lines with this, and where a personal view may or may not be seen as egregious in any given particular direction by anybody else. Obviously, there are very specific wording that are completely egregious, and they may not be identifiable directly, but at some point it could be the case that somebody said something. It's highly unlikely, so egregious that further steps may be taken. I'm just concerned that there is a blurring within the wording that doesn't specify completely within 3.3, really, that it's to do with their role, colleagues, like you say, other service users or whatever, that something has occurred, and that it's nothing to do technically with the full outside world, if you like.
I think, councillor, thank you very much for that. I think you highlight what's actually a really difficult issue when you're trying to put a policy like this together, because actually there may be some instances where actually another employee observes and sees posts that for them are highly emotive, or they completely disagree with, and they feel that actually and they know that the individual is an employee of the council, and therefore they feel that actually that's not a view that as an employee of the council that individual should be expressing. I think it's really hard for us to actually set that out explicitly in this policy. We do, however, have some supporting policies such as standards of conduct, which I think you'd have to look at each case on an individual basis. I don't think we can totally get this policy to cover it, if I'm being totally honest. Unless, of course, somebody can come up with some really good wording that actually makes it that explicit.
If I may come back, mainly because the things that bother me thinking in that domain, and the fact that it is so blurry, or could potentially be blurry, because I'd like to think that nobody would be that egregious, or create an emotive discussion that doesn't necessarily go in the right way. Let's put it that way. Specifically, the council will not tolerate. I'm going to start with one that possibly bothers me most, because anything is potentially up for debate, which is false or misleading statements. And there have been many a time over this internet age where false and misleading statements may have been considered false and misleading statements that are now not false and misleading statements. So without going into any weeds, because that would be incredibly dangerous, I'm genuinely concerned that if that was false or misleading statements regarding Somerset Council, absolutely fine with that. But false and misleading statements on a global information basis, let's go with that. I do have a problem with that because any particular subject could bother somebody else and too blurry for me. And also the term, which I'm okay with it being in there to a degree, but disrespectful comments are a bit like offensive comments, case by case basis possibly. But I think that there are other codes of conduct that would cover that possibly if somebody was to report. It's quite arbitrary and very blurry, very, very blurry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Some very thought-provoking comments. I think, yeah, I mean, the sentence at the beginning talks about in the unacceptable in the workplace, but I, as you were talking, I was thinking through some scenarios that for false and misleading statements, I agree we probably should put some caveats or some further wording about the council. But then I started to think about, well, false and misleading statements about service users, about other employees, and then we, yes, related to. So I think we can, yes, we can add to that one. Sorry, and there was one other that you picked up on, which was the, sorry, which was the other one that, yeah, disrespectful is subjective, really, isn't it? Because so let us go away and have a look at that wording and see whether there's something that we can either use from ACAS, because I think they've got a model policy, haven't they? So let us go back and see how ACAS phrase that, because I take your point. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this very blurry area.
Thank you. Councillor Wakefield was next on my list.
Yes, I was just going to ask a question about whether this has caused a problem, because we haven't had a policy. So have we had problems with staff not understanding what they should and shouldn't do? I mean, I'm assuming that these days most organisations would or might have such a policy, but I just wondered whether it has caused an issue, because if it has, obviously there's going to have to be quite a good deal of announcement of and training within the policy, I imagine.
I'll just chip in on this one. I'm conscious of time on the item, but I think it is really important. I mean, first of all, I would just going back to an earlier query, because this is linked. We write all of our HR policies for employees. So just going back to, I think, Councillor Fothergill's question around, is this also for members? They're written for employees. The members very much should be managed through the member code of conduct. And what it might do is it might trigger things when you're seeing an employee policy that you might think, actually, is that covered in our member code of conduct? And then that could be a conversation with Scott and his team around making sure that we're keeping that code of conduct kind of up to speed. Thank you for the feedback on the other areas, because we can sharpen them up. I think the main purpose of this, and the answer is yes to your question, Councillor, is that we do have lots of examples, and having worked in lots of other councils, this is a really common thing over the last few years. And you'd be surprised that people think because they're on a social media account that's their own account, they can say whatever they want. And if they bring the council into disrepute, we can absolutely investigate that and potentially take disciplinary action, and somebody may also end up being dismissed as a result of their behaviour or their conduct online. So what we're trying to do here, first and foremost, the purpose of this section is very much to flag to all of our staff, please be mindful when you're on social media of what you're saying about your employer, about your colleagues. And there's always the old adage, don't do anything that you wouldn't like done unto yourself. But it's making it very clear that there could be consequences from an employer's perspective if they are behaving inappropriately on social media. Some people don't believe that we have there's any comeback on them if they're using their own personal platforms. There's a whole line around this where it gets grey around human rights and, you know, freedom of speech and all of this stuff. But we're just making it very clear that if you're on social media on any platform, then you need to be mindful of these standards of behaviour. And we're just making it very clear that if people behave inappropriately, there could be consequences in terms of their employment with Somerset Council. And we will absolutely make that clear. And it may not have been that explicit in the past. I think most people would say common sense would dictate that you would know that, but you'd be surprised how many cases that do crop up that can lead to quite complicated employee considerations and can affect their future employment with the council.
Okay, Councillor Purbrick, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, so part of this kind of ties into that surveillance thing. We're saying that we're not allowed to surveil people, but in order to discover this, an element of surveillance would be undertaken. So presumably if a complaint was made about somebody would then have to look at their social media account and would look at not just an individual post, because it's very difficult to just see that. I think we're probably getting ourselves down into some weeds that could be covered more appropriately by whatever the law of the day is, which is evolving. And I think by more clarity around the word the council will not tolerate, because everything we've talked about is about misconduct on here will cause some kind of trigger of misconduct under our, whatever policy relates to any gross misconduct or anything else. So rather than saying the council will not tolerate, would it be better to say that any of the below could trigger a disciplinary thing in coordination with whatever the policy is that we do those kind of disciplinary actions in? Because this will not tolerate, does that mean we're going to stamp our feet and go, shouldn't do that? Or does it mean that there is actually a consequence? So I think some clarity around that language might help. And you could easily refer to anything illegal or things that may cause X, Y, Z, which is obviously open to interpretation.
Yes, I think it's the quick answer on that. Yes, we'll make that clearer in terms of there could be consequences in terms of formal processes that can be instigated as a result of conduct displayed online.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Aisham.
Thank you, Chair. I did think this one would be difficult. I think it is all across the whole world, actually. I was bothered about recruitment because I see people reposting on LinkedIn who I know to be council employees, and I'm sure they do it for very good reasons. So I was just bothered about how we identify that if an applicant or an interested party identifies their own social media links, that we do accept that as an invitation to view. So I don't know whether that needs to be clearer in the recruitment or whether that is part of exactly what you mean by invites the recruiting manager to do so as part of their application. So, but then there may be a link made through LinkedIn long before an application is received. So I was just concerned about the point at which that happened. And then the conduct on personal social media, this is something where I was always told, where I work, don't forget you're always an employee, even at midnight on a Saturday night. And I just wondered whether, because it ends with specifically the council will not tolerate, if you included all of that list, that would mean that this council has nothing to do with social media at all, because it is full of all of those things. So if I'd been writing that informally for my team, say, I would have said this council will not tolerate its officers in any guise using, and then list all of those things to be absolutely clear that you're an employee at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and also at midnight on Saturday. And I think the sharing content at the bottom of that list is really helpful too. I would just add in, should also be aware that this may be seen as tacit approval, because it is so easy for people to share things and sometimes and even like things. If you're scrolling with your left hand, it is way too easy to like something that you don't like at all. So we do, all of us, I think, have to learn to be a bit more careful, but I can see that it's really important that we do get this policy in place. Really important. So I'm not looking to delay it. I'm just looking for us to absolutely be clear, so that none of this council's many staff can say, well, you've got a policy, but that's not helping me at all.
Thank you, Councillor Lation. We will definitely take that away. I think we can just sharpen up a couple of things in here just to make it a little bit clearer. I think the trouble is, because we're using the broad band of social media, you know, once you start thinking about individual platforms, you'll have different thoughts on each one. And obviously with recruitment, LinkedIn is the obvious one. And we would encourage, you know, and we do support our managers and staff to you know, to share and to comment on the adverts. We have huge success of using our LinkedIn licenses for recruitment. It just gives us a massive search area, and obviously we can, you know, it gets to people that aren't actively looking for, you know, hard to fill roles. So it's very successful. But I think what we're trying to do here, and maybe we've just not been sharp enough with it, is we're asking people, I guess, that, you know, we're not encouraging as part of their due diligence for their recruitment that they check in Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you know, all of the many social media platforms, but we could put something very specifically about LinkedIn so people know that the code of conduct is still relevant all the way through. What we're not asking people to do is actively search people's social media to try and, you know, in terms of, I don't know, biasing their view of who they're going to shortlist or longlist. And the important thing with recruitment is that we funnel all applicants through our usual recruitment processes. So we're not going to, people can apply through LinkedIn, that goes through into our resourcing team. So it's not encouraging people to apply through any other routes other than the formal routes that we would have. But we doing, you know, with a lot of things now in the current world that we're in, we will, you know, as part of the normal recruitment process, there might be an individual named officer that somebody can phone up and make an appointment to talk to about those jobs. But I think we could just sharpen that. And I understand what the team are doing in terms of what the purpose of that statement is, but we just might need a little bit of clarity around how we use LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a professional networking platform, and everybody uses LinkedIn when they're looking for work, or, you know, if you're interviewing people, it would be really unusual that you wouldn't check them out on LinkedIn, because that's why you use LinkedIn, to help yourself in terms of your persona. But it shouldn't bias any recruitment processes at all.
Come back. Could we make an additional recommendation that the chair of this committee, working with the service director, sharpen up the points on recruitment and personal conduct, and then that would save you having to bring this back to a further committee meeting? Because my personal view is the sooner we get it in place, the better. So I would like to propose that additional recommendation, if I may, please.
Thank you. That's helpful, and we'll, if that is passed, we'll make sure to circulate it in draft to everyone before it's formally agreed. Okay, I've got Councillors Redmond and then Councillor Purbrick still.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick points. I welcome the fact that this document references other policies and procedures that we have. It's a good point to cross-reference, and should disciplinary issues come forward, it's likely to possibly be under other areas of our employee relations. It's just I think this is a good point to highlight the fact that we now have a policy, and to concentrate people's minds a little bit. And just maybe a suggestion we want to consider under section 4, which is the incident reporting, is including the ability to signpost to our whistleblower policy. Not that you would want people to go searching for things to find, but it may add to the warning element to it. look, in as far as the whistleblowing policy is potentially relevant there for reporting concerns. Should anyone have just a thought there, Chair?
Yep, thank you. Sure, we can take that on. And Councillor Purbrick.
So from everything we've been talking about, I think what has happened is we've conflated a policy with a best practice approach. And I think potentially you need to separate them out because the policy is about, it's an acceptable usage policy is what we're talking about. And I think there's stuff in here that is about acceptable usage and there's stuff in here that is about best practice or trying to be about best practice. And perhaps the policy needs to be simplified to be an acceptable usage policy and that you create something that goes with that, that is best practice, that talks about your LinkedIn practices or whatever else. I think that might be what the comms team have got, but their social media guidance document is a broken link on the intranet, so I can't check whether that's what they've got behind it because the policy is not live and the guidance doesn't work. But I think that that practice within this space would probably be a way of simplifying everything that we've talked about for the last half an hour or more. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do that, as I think we can have a short, sharp policy with some guidance for managers attached. And I think, yeah, you're right, trying to give both in a short statement is maybe causing more questions than it is providing answers. But thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, so is this committee right? So are we saying we're happy to endorse the principles of this, but delegate to the service director in consultation with me the signing off of the final version, taking into account all the things that have been said, including what Councillor Purbrick has just said? Or are we saying we want to put this off for 3 months, do all of that work and come back? I need a steer on that one.
I'd like to propose the first option.
So that's proposed by Councillor Lation, seconded by Councillor Redman. Do we have any, all those in favour of that direction of travel, that proposal?
So,
yeah, you can.
Can I just clarify on that? But you said you're going to circulate it around to people, so
yeah,
yeah.
Fine. Okay. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to more coming around on that in the next few weeks. But thank you all very much. I think that was a really helpful discussion. It's a very, very tricky area to get right, and it is important that we get it right. So thank you. Thank you very much to Michelle and Sari and Dawn. Okay, that brings us on to item 9, which is due to last from half an hour ago until now, which is the workforce update. So over to Dawn.
Prompt noted, Chair. So I'm sure you've all enjoyed reading my quarterly workforce update in your pack of information. What I've provided to you, you'll be familiar with the roadmap, which is just a cut and drop really from the key things that we discussed earlier from the people strategy. This presentation basically outlines to you an HR and OD update for Q2 from July to September. Goes through the key functional areas within my service and what has actually progressed in that time. So it covers pay and reward, SAP success factors, all of our HR operations teams, including recruitment, a little bit of a snapshot on business partnering and pay and reward. It also covers what's been happening across the OD and employee experience teams and our EDI function of equality, diversity, inclusion. Employee relations is our new term for HR advisory, in case people are unclear about that new terminology. It's just a modern HR terminology. So it talks to you about what we've delivered over the last quarter on policy, employee relations, and then there's also quite a comprehensive section on health and safety, which I won't go into because I know you've got a special spotlight on health and safety next. Probably the key areas that you might want to focus on as a panel today will be the areas of focus looking forward. So there is 2 or 3 slides there for you on areas of focus for Q3. So again, what this does is it takes the roadmap from the people strategy and breaks down what we're prioritising and looking at over the next 12 weeks. So it includes how we're taking forward the work on the staff survey, for example. We're doing a huge series of staff engagement sessions around the county at the moment, where service directors, myself included, are meeting with groups of staff, talking to them about some of the key themes that have come out of the survey and trying to get some more feedback and get underneath the root cause of areas of concern. That will inform an action plan that will be able to be shared once that's completed. And also, obviously, we're empowering managers across the whole organisation. We've provided them with BI reports on their staff survey results, and they are currently talking to their colleagues within their team meetings to really understand and get underneath how people feel about working for Somerset Council in their areas. So that's just an area that's going on that you might not be cited on. We still obviously are having to maintain a tight grip and control over the pay bill. We're looking very much at how we're still fixing the basics. I would say this whole year is about reset and refocus for a lot of our HR policies and procedures and processes. We have a lot, what I would call a lot of noise in the system at the moment about how do we simplify and make it easier to recruit, to onboard, to manage agency with our data reporting, how we're managing recruitment and retention allowances. All of these things are really challenging for our managers across the organisation. And what HR, OD and finance are doing is working very closely together to look at how we can process map our current processes before we've done a lot of digital transformation, and how we can make them easier, quicker and simpler to use. So over the next couple of months, we are doing some work and workshopping on how we improve establishment management, how we review and reduce agency and interim spend, how we review and reduce absence and long-term sickness across the organisation, and to make sure that we've got a real grip on where we are spending council budget on recruitment and retention allowances around these areas. We've touched on recruitment and retention already today with a spotlight on planning, but there are a number of areas across the organisation where there is still a very high peak of work at the moment across the council on filling vacancies. That was always expected post restructure because we've got new structures across the council. We've created a lot of new opportunities. A lot of our staff have been promoted internally and we're having to backfill the jobs that they are moving. So there's a constant movement in the organisation and a very high level of activity on recruitment across the council. In addition to that, we have to not lose sight of working strategically. We will put Directorate workforce plans in place by the end of the financial year. We will start looking at targeted areas where we can do succession planning and workforce planning, because we need to look at the future, and especially when you look at our workforce profiles and the proportion of the council that's quite small in terms of our under 30s, and we've got maybe a quarter of the workforce that's 55 plus, we really need to understand what is going to be happening in the next few years, what skills are we going to need, how are we going to succession plan for the future, and this is all going to come through with our Directorate workforce plans. So we're really starting to pull that work together, and we need to prioritise where we spend further time looking at that in more detail. Trade unions is another area as well. We've set up a working group with the trade unions around pay and reward. We want to make sure that everything we do is in collaboration with key stakeholders. So by the time we get to maybe making some difficult decisions at our corporate joint consultation and negotiation forums, that there are no shocks and surprises with our trade unions, and that we know that we won't always be in agreement, but we need to move forward at pace and move this project forward. So having a face-to-face workshop with them on a regular basis, that's already kicked off, and that's proving very positive. So I was just going to leave it there because I could go into this in a huge amount of detail, but hopefully it's a quick read. It's a summary of the activity that we've achieved and things that we're focusing on over the next few months. There's a real mix of operational and strategic work and transformational work happening across the workforce. But I hope it gives you a helpful update on where we are, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Do we have any questions? Councillor Stanton.
On page 79, the pay and reward programme, Corn Ferry now working on job evaluation, which is good, a state-of-the-art job evaluation scheme. But I'm relating this back to a discussion that happened at corporate governance on the 24th of September when we were considering the council's approach to using AI. And I picked up the point that there was a business analyst role that was graded quite low, but that was described as pivotal. So you may remember, Dawn, I sent you an email and the committee chairman and the AI manager and the IT manager an email drawing attention to this, assuming in my innocence that maybe the job had been undergraded. But the consequence of that AI presentation was I started using AI quite actively and looking all kinds of things up. And what I discovered, and a lot of you may know already, is that artificial intelligence bots have a tendency to pick on particular language, and one of their favorite words is pivotal. And it hadn't occurred to me, and it should have done, that a report on AI presented to a committee probably had been partly written by AI, which it obviously had been. So there's a warning here in writing job descriptions, which are the basis for evaluation, that if AI is used to generate or part generate them, there's a risk that it puts in words which suggest the job is bigger or maybe smaller than it really is. That was it.
Thank you, Councillor. And yes, we are trialling AI in various processes across HR and OD, but we are absolutely clear that AI might only give us 50 to 60% of what we require. The human element, the responsibility of the hiring manager to own that job description, to have consulted properly on it, is absolutely crucial. So we're not replacing our job description process with automation, although it does help us give us a starter for 10, using very best practice job descriptions and similar job descriptions from elsewhere, but we're not reliant on it, nor are we using it to grade the jobs.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you for a very helpful report, Dawn. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can email Dawn afterwards. That brings us to item 10, which is the HR committee work programme on page 89. And it says I'm going to invite Dawn Betteridge to give an update on the work programme. Did you know that?
I didn't.
I mean, the work programme is much the same as it, it's a work programme. Does anyone have any questions?
I would like a surprise.
I don't think it needs introduction. Does anyone have any questions or observations about the work programme? Councillor Fothergill.
Can I just say that I'm working through the ModGov system and it's given me access denied on this paper, so I can't actually see it. I'm just in the papers for today's meeting.
You've got all the other papers, so
yeah.
That's very strange.
Just this one that says access denied.
This is a strange AI.
I will share.
Strange IT glitch. Councillor Redmond.
Just a small point with the work programme, Chair. Forgive me for highlighting anything. We indicated today about the potentially having things come back to us. One of the things that I've introduced in the scrutiny committee that I chair is an outcome tracker to remind us of things coming back, because it's very often we go through these and we make a really valid point, as we did about the policy, having the report come back on a 6-monthly basis, etc. I just wondered what your views are in relation to recording outcomes or things to remember, because it would help in populating future programmes rather than have to have a programme there. An outcome tracker would identify the fact that we've, as a committee, identified something and suggested it to come back, and do just a way of monitoring it. Just a thought, Chair.
Are you suggesting we hold ourselves accountable for doing the things we've said we were going to do? Very radical stuff here.
Spot on.
No, I think that sounds like an excellent idea that we introduced. That is something we can work on we'll work on that. Thank you. Right, unless there are any other questions or comments, we're asked to consider and note the work programme. We have considered it, we've noted it, we've even made a improvement, but as we don't have a tracker, we don't know whether we'll ever bring that back or not. Thank you all very much for your time today. I think we've done some very valuable work on scrutinising and improving and adopting what we have had before us. Meeting is formally closed.